Welcome to the second module of our course on transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption measures in education. As an introduction to this module, we are going to focus today on various tools that can be used to diagnose corrupt practices in the education sector. In this presentation, we are going to focus on four major diagnostic tools, namely PETS, Public Expenditure Tracking Surveys, QSDS, Quantitative Service Delivery Surveys, report cards, and opinion surveys. PETS and QSDS follow a fact-finding approach, meaning that by using this type of tools, you're going to be able to collect facts about corruption in education. For example, percentage of leakage of funds going to schools in the system. Report cards and opinion surveys are quite different because both are based on the perception of users on service delivery, especially at school or at university level. Both approaches, the fact-finding and perception approaches, are often opposed. But as we will see in this presentation, both can in fact prove extremely useful and complementary in order to document the issue of corruption in the education sector. Let us look in more detail to each of these tools, starting with the PETS, the Public Expenditure Tracking Survey. PET consisted in an audit of flows of funds from the central level down to the schools. In other terms, they are going to help us track resources from central authorities like the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Education down to intermediate administrations such as regions, provinces, or districts, and then to the schools. QSDS, Quantitative Service Delivery Surveys, consist in observing service delivery, mostly at school or at classroom level. They are also conducted by an external entity. Report card surveys consist in an evaluation by the beneficiaries themselves of the quantity and quality of services delivered at school or university level. They usually mobilize schools, teachers, parent-teacher associations, and sometimes also pupils. Opinion surveys consist in interviewing a number of stakeholders on specific topics such as academic fraud. They can be conducted by an internal or an external entity. They are usually conducted at school or university level, and they can involve teachers, university professors, pupils, or students. Public expenditure tracking surveys are used to locate and measure leakage of funds, analyze such leakage, and propose remedies on this basis. To conduct a PET, you have to collect information on the funds that have been allocated to the Ministry of Education by the Ministry of Finance. You are then going to track those funds from the Ministry of Education down to local administrations. And then you are again going to track those flows of funds from local administrations down to the schools. The first PETS was initiated in Uganda in 1996 by the World Bank. But since then, several dozens of PETs have been implemented worldwide, from Burkina to Cambodia, Mongolia, Peru, or Zambia. RIP has been actively supporting national team in charge of PETs for more than a decade now. This table presents the results of PETs that have been conducted in different countries. You have the list of countries in the first column. The second column gives you the types of funds that have been tracked through those PETs. The third column, the number of schools that have been surveyed. And the last column, the percentage of leakage that has been calculated on this basis. You see that the percentage of leakage can range from 10% in the case of the fixed grant of Zambia up to 72% in the case of leakage of textbooks in Tanzania. This table shows clearly that leakage of resources in the system can be quite significant and sometimes even huge. Quantitative Service Delivery Surveys, QSDS, are used to examine the efficiency of public spending in education by looking, for instance, at the presence of teachers in the classroom. More specifically, they are used to analyze the various dimensions of service delivery on the front line, meaning at school or university level. They can help identify, for instance, the actual number of hours taught per week or the number of ghost teachers registered on the payroll. They have been implemented in many countries such as Bangladesh, Ecuador, India, Indonesia, or Peru, often in combination with the pets. This table shows the results of a QSDS on teacher absenteeism that was conducted in India. As you see, the percentage of teacher absenteeism varies a lot from state to state. In Maharashtra, it is around 15%, but it can go up to 42% in the case of the state of Jharkhand, with an average for the whole of India of about 25%. The case of the states where teacher absenteeism exceeds 30% are presented in red. This shows clearly where the priority should go in order to address such a phenomenon. Report card surveys are used to provide quantitative feedback on user knowledge on the quantity, accessibility, and adequacy of public service delivery. They are often presented on a single sheet of paper that summarize the results of the report card survey. This sheet of paper is usually widely disseminated to the public in order to put pressure on public authorities and thus to exact public accountability. They have been implemented in many countries worldwide, both developed like the US, but also in Latin America and elsewhere. This table shows the results of a report card survey that was conducted in 8 upazilas or 8 districts from Bangladesh. It shows the diversity of fees that were collected in these different districts. It also presents the amounts that were collected for each of these fees. You see that some of the fees were devoted to the admission into primary school, other fees to the entertainment of government officers, and that there were a variety of fees related to examination. At total, this survey allowed to calculate that more than 350,000 US dollars were paid by parents on an annual basis to get their children to the schools and to pass the exams. After these results were released, it generated a very useful discussion between schools, parent-teacher associations, and local authorities to address this phenomenon. Opinion surveys are used to provide feedback on perceived levels of corruption in education. They can prove extremely useful to highlight issues such as academic fraud that cannot be covered by fact-finding surveys. This is the most current type of survey used in many countries, in particular at university level. On this slide, I'm going to share with you the results of an opinion survey that was recently conducted on the issue of academic fraud in Kosovo. As part of the survey, the following question was asked to public university students. During the last 2 years, have you heard of cases when? Here are the results of the survey. More than 50% of students declared that they had heard of cases when someone had to pay a bribe to get a position as the university professor. Again, more than 50% declared that they had heard of cases when someone had to pay an official for admitting his or her child to university. And about 46% of them had declared that they had heard of cases when someone had to pay an official to pass a university exam. And about 1/3 of them declared that they had heard of cases when someone had to pay a gift to an official in order to pass a university exam. Of course, these are perception, not facts, but at the same time, I'm sure that you will agree with me that they can provide very useful insights on corruption or fraud phenomena in the education sector. There can be a number of challenges in the process of implementation of these different types of survey. Let me mention a few of them. First, the cost of these surveys. Large survey like PET or QSDS can indeed require more than 100,000 US dollars in order to be implemented properly. The second challenge has to do with the capacity of the survey team to conduct the work. This leads us to the following question. Who should undertake such surveys? The Ministry of Education, National Institute of Statistics, students, NGOs, consultants. It very much depends on the type of survey and the objectives followed. In any case, it is important to find the right balance between ensuring the neutrality of the results and at the same time building ownership in the process, especially from country authorities. Another challenge has to do with the identification of good sampling specialists. If you don't have a good sampling specialist, it will be very difficult to generalize the results of your work. And finally, a key step in the process is, of course, to interpret the results of the survey properly in order to be in a position to recommend proper follow-up. We have now come to the conclusion of this short presentation. I hope that you will withdraw a number of conclusions from it. Let me emphasize three of them. First, there is a diversity of diagnostic tools that can be used to assess corruption in education. Second, fact-finding approaches and perception approaches are both valuable in order to document different types of malpractices in education. Third, it is very important to try to promote both the reliability and also the ownership of the results of the surveys that are undertaken. I hope that this presentation will help you respond to the questions that are going to be raised as part of Module 2, both during our online discussions and as part of your online assignment. The first question is, what tools could be used to assess corrupt practices in your own country? And second, what would be, according to you, the major conditions of their success? I hope that you will enjoy the rest of Module 2.